All right, welcome everybody to Homecare Owners Corner. I'm Julio Briones, CEO of Briones Consulting Group, and your host for today's episode. So, got a real treat for you today. I get the question a lot about, the one subject everybody hates, but they all know they have to deal with, and that's insurance. All right, so today we are going to help you demystify the process of home care insurance. Our guest is Peter Frey. He is a risk advisor who specializes in the home care industry. Now, for those of you that are joining us for the first time, first, give us a like, subscribe to the channel. Less than 10% of you that watch us regularly are actually subscribed. And leave us a comment below. Let us know, what is it that just blows your mind about the whole concept of insurance in your home care agency? So Pierre here brings 30 years of, commercial risk management experience. And not only that, we like to bring you additional value, bring you vendors and specialists that actually truly understand the home care space in and of itself. And Peter, not only does he understand the insurance side of it, he also owned his own agency for many years, bringing it from zero to right around $10 million um, before selling his own interest off and moving along. So since then, he's dedicated his entire practice to helping home care agencies manage risk and providing them education for their insurance needs. So, welcome, Peter.
Thanks for having me on your show
Yeah.
today.
All right. So let's just jump right in because we got a lot we want to talk about. And I think, I mean, call me a nerd or whatever, but at the end of the day, I think this is a fascinating subject. And I can't tell you how many times a day I actually get asked, hey, do you know if I have enough coverage? I don't know these things. I'm not a licensed insurance broker, and I always, try to get people the answers. And so I really appreciate you being on here. So let me ask you, now before I even let you get a word in edgewise,
Okay.
what is the biggest risks when we're talking about home care?
Well, we can go into each of the individual parts in a little bit because there are a lot of surprises which people don't realize are there. It's almost like when you buy a car. A lot of people are looking at what's the horsepower in the engine, how much torque, what kind of gas mileage it might have. They might even kick the tires, see how it rides. But if the fuel pump goes, it's going to make that commute really hard. So it's looking for the things which
Mhm.
might not be obvious. I think that's really important. The other piece is that it's not just an insurance issue. It's a risk management issue. And if you look at, I mean, you could talk to your clients. I know being in the home care business myself, what my day was comprised of. It
Mhm.
was, some days it was focused on marketing. We're always trying to recruit, onboarding people in HR, compliance, big issues. And then, of course, there's also the human things that, you know, kids need to be picked up from school. There's a contractor at the house, a pipe burst. And people
Mhm.
forget that that's a part of your day, but it has to be acknowledged. You have
Right.
to look because you only have so much time and attention to give while you're
Right.
awake. But what I find what's missing in a lot of cases is risk management. It's not a thought and a way a lot of people say, well, you know what, I bought insurance.
Right.
And
So I'm sorry to cut you off here, but now for there's a lot of people here that watch our show that are experienced owners, but there's also a lot of people that are just coming into the industry and they're brand new business owners. Help me help them understand what risk me is in terms of the business and what do you mean by risk management?
okay. Risk management, well, when you're starting out in a business, the first thing you need to do if you want to get licensed is be legal.
Right.
And that really means you're going to have to buy general and professional liability, and you're going to have to buy workers' compensation.
Okay.
You buy those two policies, and a lot of times that consideration is made by budget. Budget is usually the biggest driver of that. Someone saying, you know what, I want to spend as little as possible. I haven't made my first dollar yet.
Right.
And so get me what I need to open the doors. And a lot
Okay.
of times it just sits, and it kind of continues that way as the company grows. So the opposite side of that is the people that want to buy everything. They're looking to say, you know what, I don't know, but bad things can happen. Cover me in every way possible.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say a lot of people say, well, Pete, that must be a dream for you because, you sell insurance and they want to buy. It's not. And it's not for a couple of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
One being that they're spending a lot of money they might not need to be spending. And that money could be used to grow their company, which is better for me. I would rather see you grow your company than buy a couple extra policies. But the
Right.
other reason that just buying policies isn't this isn't an ideal customer is because if they're just buying, they're not really looking at preventing bad things from happening. If you're buying an insurance policy, it might help you with the financial impact of something bad happening, but there are a lot of bad things that you can just prevent from happening by having good practices as an operator.
Right. So essentially what you're telling us is like risk management in a very broad sense. It's just understanding and being able to take a look at what could possibly have a negative impact in your business. And then we manage this in part by having the right insurance, not just blanketing everything or trying to be a cheap ass and not having any at all.
It is. I mean, really,
Okay.
what we have to do is when we take a deep dive into the company, and
Mm.
although I have a background in as a home care operator, there are a lot of different nuances to the business. It could be
Right.
what is your consumer mix? What is your service mix?
Hmm.
Are you offering, for instance, like live-in care? That changes things. Are you offering transportation? That
Right.
changes things.
Okay. So what are like, let's focus in on that because one of the things that used to be very popular, and then after the Department of Labor changes in 2015, a lot of agencies abandoned it, is live-in care. Like for example, what impact to my business would offering live-in care have on the insurance side of it, the risk management side? And you know, on the second part of that, this is something that's becoming more and more prevalent. Um, I've owned agencies in Michigan. I've co-owned agencies in New Jersey. It's it's a lot to think about, and those two states in particular, I'm using as an example because of the legalization of recreational marijuana. For example, in Michigan, when those laws were passed, very literally in the first 30 days, we lost six caregivers because of car accidents on the way to a client. They weren't necessarily the ones smoking, other people were. So how is that all going to impact the policies that I need, and how do I mitigate the risk of all of this? So that's two parts: live-in care
Okay.
and transportation to with clients.
Yeah. Well, live-in care, what makes live-in care difficult is that people sleep. That's
Right.
a big part of it. And a lot of times the consumer is somewhat ambulatory, maybe not 100%, but they care for the caregiver. There's a
Mhm.
sort of like, you know what, this person worked really hard today. I'm going to let them rest. I can probably get to the bathroom myself.
Right.
And these claims happen. And the insurance world has been impacted by these claims. So, live in care, there's only a number of carriers, a small number of carriers who want to write anything to do with live in care. So, it becomes a very selective marketplace. So,
So
when
the
that
issue is what,
happens,
when somebody gets hurt while the caregiver's asleep?
yeah, the person's there all the time. When are they working and when are they not working?
Okay.
Uh, Good companies, a lot of times, if the work is shifted, that's a big plus.
Right.
So if we're doing shifts and that they're allowed at least 8 hours sleep before the next shift,
Right.
so somebody's filling in, but that's an issue.
Right.
Transportation is an issue. Transportation is a lot of issues.
Yeah. Well, yes.
Transportation, to just say what are risk management pieces related to transportation? A lot of companies say, well, you know what? I don't have any cars. I don't have an auto exposure.
Right. Which
It's
is
like
wrong. Right.
they do.
Yeah.
And here's the reason. The reason is that during the course of the caregiver doing their job, they may be asked to do things like, and I'm not even talking about transporting
No,
the
no,
consumer.
transporting themselves during business hours.
Yeah, I'm going to run to the store, pick up a prescription or something like
Yeah.
that, and they get into an auto accident.
Right.
Well, you say, well, they have their own insurance. And they do, because you, as a prudent operator, made sure that these people have insurance and you've run a motor vehicle report and said,
Hmm.
you know what, they have a good drive. Let's assume you've done all of those things.
Yeah, but do they have enough insurance?
That's the point. How
Yeah.
much do you pay these people? They're
Yeah.
probably not carrying top limits. So if
Right.
they're carrying this minimums, they may have 15, $30,000 worth of coverage where you hit another car. What kind
Hmm.
of car are you buying for that amount of money if you have to replace it?
Yeah.
Forget about the bodily injury and how the other person may be hurt. So
Yes.
now what happens when something serious happens? They're going to come back and say, well, what were you doing? I was running an errand for my
Hmm.
consumer,
Right.
for my patient. And they're going to say, oh, and you were doing this, you work for who? Well, I work for such and such agency.
Yep.
So not for your employment with this agency, this person wouldn't have been injured and their car wouldn't have been wrecked.
Right.
They're liable. And this
Well,
is something that
mhm.
people miss all the time.
Well, yeah. I mean, on that specific note, I can't tell you how many times over the years, I've been doing this on my end independently since 2015, where I've been directly consulting. I can't tell you how many times I've been called into, shut down agencies that, caregiver, got, it's icy out. Caregiver was asked to go pick up a gallon of milk for the client, or pick up the pharmacy that was urgent, some medication. They were down to the last two heart pills, and somebody, ran a red light because of the ice. Nobody's at fault, but somebody's got to pay. And if the caregiver, well, this one case in particular, it was actually the marketer for the agency. Ice slid, truck slid. They literally got hit head on by a semi that both cars just couldn't stop. It was in South Jersey, and it was devastating to the agency. They ended up closing down. You're talking about the marketer ended up crippled. The driver of the truck, ended up very seriously injured as well. Two careers ended. That was a lot of money, and on the owner was not properly insured. They wanted to save some money, and they ended up having to go bankrupt. Lost everything.
And again, we're not even talking about transporting a
A
consumer,
client, right?
which a lot of agencies do. And that's the differentiator. They've
Yeah,
decided, you know what, I am in the home care business, but my differentiator is I'm a free taxi service.
right.
And they're driving people around. Um, and the insurance community, the insurance marketplace is aware of these things that happen. I see these claims, where did I see professional liability claims where
Yeah.
people weren't cared for properly because people get into accidents all the time.
Right.
So we need to have policies in place. And by policies, I'm not talking insurance policies, but procedural policies and
Hmm.
checks. This is the risk management piece to say, you know what, these people have vetted their drivers. We know that they're insured, they've been trained,
Right.
things to look for. Accidents do happen,
Right.
but sometimes when there's an awareness, less of them happen. The other thing is they say, well, you know what? I'm not using my car. I'm not using the caregiver's cars. I'm using the consumer's car. And this happens a lot.
Right.
This happens a lot because the consumer, the client feels comfortable in their car. So they want to ride around that. They don't want to get in the caregiver's whatever they're driving.
Yes.
So now
That's very common. Mhm.
you have this is a very difficult risk. And it needs to be controlled, and it can be to some extent, because now you have the risk as a business owner of not only what your caregiver may drive into, you also have the possible injury of the client.
Yep.
And thirdly, you cracked up their car.
Hmm.
So you're responsible for that. And none of these things, how do you keep up with the maintenance of your consumer's vehicle? It's very difficult. When's the last time they checked their brakes? What kind of
Right.
repair is it in?
Well, I'll tell you how one of the ways that my company helps my clients mitigate some of that is we actually have policies and forms and things to help our clients. So, number one, we train all of our agency owners, our agency owner clients to have policies in place that all transportation involving the client must be approved. So, a request has to be put in with specific dates, and the client must, it's got to be approved by everybody. So this way the client knows. We also have them speak to their attorney because some states, they all different laws, different regulations about
Mhm.
creating a waiver of liability for the client. Like, hey, you understand that you're requesting this and you're not going to hold the company liable, for injury or whatever, if it's their car. If it's the caregiver's car, that's, you can't really do that. But then in order, and in either case, whether it's the caregiver's car or the client's car, I tell them, and we have policies in place that require annual safety checks by a mechanic, that gets done. And
Excellent.
we have a form that we make them take to their mechanic that's got a checklist of everything, of all the features, the tire treads, brakes, maintenance records, all of this stuff. It costs, the clients that want to use their own car, they're not afraid to pay this, especially if we're talking about private pay. It costs about
Mhm.
$200 to get this type of inspection done on average, but they'll do it. They'll do a full safety check, and this gets done, and you require it once a year. This way, between each safety check, because part of it is oil changes and all of this other stuff has to get submitted, it's kept on file. Otherwise, there's no transportation. And that the caregiver gets listed on the client's insurance as a part-time driver. Yeah.
That's fantastic that you have these. And this is what I was talking about when I said
Mhm.
it isn't just insurance, it's risk management.
Right.
That you're at least doing these things. And these waivers are a great first line of defense. They
Right.
deter a lot of claims from happening.
Right.
They're
Now
not
they don't always
protection.
uphold. Yes.
They're not, because I mean
Yeah.
I've had many of my clients have gone to court with things like, look, we have all these procedures in place,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm trying to think of a good way to saying it, but I've heard judges basically saying, wow, that's a great waiver. You can use it to start your barbecue
Yeah.
later on.
Oh,
That's the
and
nice way
but
of saying
and you're
it.
absolutely look, I've been in court with my clients from time to time, where I've heard judges tell them that they would have been
You
better off
can't
writing it
sign
on
away.
toilet paper. Yeah,
Yeah.
But the
And the
thing
other issue
is,
too,
yeah,
the other piece is even though these people signed a waiver, the
right,
people that the people that you crashed into didn't sign that waiver.
correct, correct,
And that's why you have insurance.
right. And that's also
But
why I
you,
tell my clients to talk to their lawyer because I'm not writing a waiver like
oh no, no,
that.
no. And every state's different. And a lot of
Yep,
times, like I said, it's a good deterrent because a lot of people say, you know what, I did sign a waiver.
yep,
And so I said I wouldn't sue because I put it on paper and
yep,
they leave it at that, and it goes away. If they
yep.
do take it to court, a lot of times, like I said, it's a piece of paper.
Exactly. It's
But
that's about it.
but it is a part of risk management. As
Yes.
it's saying that I've looked at this and I am making sure that I am putting my consumer and my
Yep.
caregiver in something that is roadworthy and in good condition.
Right. So, and that makes a lot of sense. Now, I just want to double back a little bit to the live-in thing.
Okay.
So, because a live-in, I know a lot of agents stay away from it for a number of reasons. I've never thought of the insurance implication of it, to be honest with you. But when it comes to this, you know, so as long as you're tracking the time and there's a good agreement in place, because this is again what I teach my clients on this, that there has to be an agreement for live-in care that's signed by the client, apart from the regular service agreement. There are, set
Mhm.
of rules of what the expectations are, and one that is signed by the caregiver. So this way we everybody's aware of what happened. And I know not everybody reads it, but ignorance of the law is no excuse for, for not having to
Yeah,
follow it.
it
So
doesn't
as long
change the
as these things are all signed and time is properly tracked and all of these other agreements are in place, does that make it easier for for one of the insurance underwriters to kind of feel more at ease working with an agency that does live-in care?
It absolutely does. Again, there are insurance markets that will write live-in care.
Right.
Otherwise, there would be no live-in care because
Correct.
no one's taking on that risk on their own.
Right.
A lot of
Actually,
the
you'll be amazed,
insurance
but
marketplace, it's a much broader marketplace for people who don't do it. So you're like,
right.
oh, this other company gets their insurance is a fifth of the cost of mine, and we're pretty much the same size, but they don't do live-in care.
Right.
That's the reason for the difference.
Gotcha. Gotcha. All right. All right. Yeah, I just wanted to clear that up because it's something that I was very fortunate that during that Obama era, labor adjustments, I was able to sit on a couple of labor boards. So I'm very well versed in what it needs to look like. Um, but that insurance implication is definitely something new to me. See, that's why I love doing these interviews. I always learn something new.
Another thing, I mean, we're talking about waivers.
Mhm.
When you're talking to me, what are the biggest risk issues that I come across? And it's always employees.
Right.
Employees are the first thing because that's where the rubber hits the road. I mean, they can get injured, they can hurt people, they
Right.
can damage stuff, they can hurt you, and they don't
hmm
even have to be working with you to do so. And
No.
I'll come right back to that point. But an exceptional employee, really beloved by the consumer, by the client,
hmm
presents an unusual risk that I see pop up a lot. Family will hire an agency to provide a
Yep.
caregiver to watch their, let's say, grandmother.
Right.
And this person is there day and night taking care of them, talking with them, watching television, socializing with them. These kids, they haven't seen their grandmother, like they maybe once a year they swing by or something like that, but
Right.
this is their daily socialization. They love this person probably more than their kids.
Right. I've
And
seen that.
then well, yeah, these people, and it goes both ways.
Yes.
Well, now it's the holiday season. And the caregiver says, you know what? You make me actually want to wake up in the morning. You make me happy. You take care of me. I want to give you this heirloom. I want to
Yeah.
give you this necklace or something like that.
Yep.
And the person's like, well, we're not allowed to. And this stuff. It's like, no, please, you must take it. And I really
Hmm.
want you to have it. And it looks beautiful on you. And they do. And they don't think anything of it.
Right.
Family comes by and they're like, so where's the necklace I
Where's
was
my
promised?
inheritance? Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
That's exactly it. Hmm.
And the a big cause of claims isn't the consumer getting it's the family of the consumer
Right.
who has been removed from the actual care. They pay the bills, but they want their stuff, and they say, no, the person gifted it to me.
Right.
And you say, well, no, you took advantage of an old lady and played on her
Yep.
emotions, and she has dementia or whatever the reason is. She doesn't know that your person either tricked her or stole it from her.
Right.
So again, we talk about a waiver, or it's not even a waiver, but a receipt. So they acknowledge, like, there's at least a paper trail there
Yes.
saying, and then if it comes down to that and they have to give it back, they have to give it back. But there's a
Right.
paper trail that says, I didn't steal it. This person willingly gave it to me.
Right. And
And
that's
it
got to do with
helps.
training. That has to do with training a lot too. Because I know that I've been doing this almost 30 years of my life.
Mhm.
And with it's one of the things I learned very early on. I was still a teenager that when I worked with this one agency, and that was their policy. They actually had this back in the 90s where the client was educated and constantly reminded that if they wanted to give the caregiver a gift, whether it's a bonus, an item, whatever it is, it has to go through the hands of the agency first. So, and I think that is a fantastic policy, especially around Christmas time, because you're right. A lot of
Mhm.
times, Christmas, birthdays, Mother's Day, these clients will want to do something nice for the person that takes care of them. And when they go to give it to them, it can cause, well, not just insurance or theft accusations, but there's also a tax implication for this for the client. Or if they're trying to do a spend down for Medicaid, transition from private pay into the Medicaid side, you have to justify every penny, otherwise you can hit these, penalties. So we always, and I carry this on with my own clients, get into the habit of continually educating your clients and your caregivers on the dangers of gift giving without the paper trail. Have it
Mhm.
go. Somebody from the office will go to the home. You'll get a receipt for what was done. It will be given to the caregiver. There will be a receipt given when it's done, and the agency maintains all records. And this way, if anything does come up, especially post-mortem, because when the client dies, that's when all of a sudden that great nephew's twice removed that nobody ever heard of, all of a sudden is like, hey, I saw grandma once back in 1847, and I know she had this ring, and
And she
it's
promised it to me.
right, right. And since grandma's not around to tell you anymore, there's no there. It becomes a huge court battle. But as long as you have the paper trail, that's something that a lot of agency owners don't think about.
Yeah, and I'm going to keep circling back to this, and I
Yes.
really love hearing what you're telling me, because it isn't as simple as I bought some insurance policy.
Right.
Because if you don't manage the risk, guess what? At some
Oh
point,
no.
nobody's going to want to insure you because things are
Yep.
going to go.
Yeah.
Again, with employees, we're talking about, like, even people that you don't employ anymore, or people that you didn't hire, can be a huge source of
Hmm.
loss.
Right.
I'm sure you have stories. I remember we were
Yeah.
discussing one time. You're telling me about the I believe it was it in Jersey or Philadelphia, had an agency with a large claim involving an employee that had to be terminated.
Oh, yes. Yeah, actually it was in Jersey. This was
Okay.
early on when I was actually first getting going into consulting, and I was still involved in the franchise space, there was an African American owner of a business, very successful. She was a doctor, and she wanted to give back to people less fortunate in her own community. So she hired an office manager that participated in the same church as her. Again, another African American woman. It's normally race is completely irrelevant, but it actually plays a big role in this particular case. The office manager stole $15,000 from the owner, and the owner, to not cause any issues, she decided to not press charges and said, "Listen, I don't want to ruin things for you. I don't want to make it so that your kids have to suffer unnecessarily. Here, just you're terminated. You're no longer working here, but I'm not. But you're good to go." Well, long story short, it ended up in court, and the employee ended up suing the owner for racial discrimination and actually won in court. And um, the judge, the I'll never forget this. I think I'll be 90 and I'll still be talking about this. The judge actually just told this owner that she should have pressed charges and none of this would have happened. So no good deed goes unpunished. And not only did she have her $15,000 stolen, she also, because she did not carry the right insurance, she also ended up having to pay $30,000 for wrongful termination. So, and
Restitution?
an additional, I'm sorry?
That was for restitution.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
wow.
and on top of that, it cost her almost $10,000 in legal fees just to lose $45,000 total. So it was a very expensive thing, all because, that she specifically did not carry EPLI. So that's actually great transition to my next question. Besides general liability, what would be the three top riders that you would recommend any home care agency to look at? Not regardless of whether they're brand new or they're $30 million agency, irrelevant. Just something that three top pieces of insurance that they should have, and
Well,
that will
and
save
also
their
we'll
life.
leave out general and professional liability, which
Yeah,
they
I
need
mean,
to
and
have,
beyond
and
that,
workers' comp,
yeah,
which they all have.
yeah,
And also we need to look at we need to make sure they have the right general and professional liability.
right,
Workers' comp, it looks the same in every state.
right,
It's kind of shrink wrap. The way it's executed is not, so we can look at that. Pricing isn't always the same. We can look
right,
at that. But general and professional liability, they're not standard forms.
right,
And that's why I talk about, I always want to do a deep dive into what is the agency doing, because I was introduced to an agency owner, and I said, well, you know what? Let me take a look at what you have in place. I heard your story. You told me about your agency and what you do. Let's see if the insurance policies that you have in place tell me the same story.
right,
And it did take me, but flipping a few pages, and I say, here's an exclusion for live-in care,
right,
and you provide live-in care. It makes a difference. It makes a difference today. The policies that you have in place, how the form reads. A lot of times down the road, people are like, I'm not going to be in business forever. I want to sell it.
yep,
What your insurance looks like and how it's written is part of how marketable you are to a prospective buyer, and things
right,
that and the hoops that you'll need to go through to be able to sell and make that transaction happen.
right,
So we've talked about the basics, but you just don't buy general and professional liability. We need to take a close look at that. You touched on employment practices liability. Again, not a standard form.
right.
Um, Overtime becomes an issue. So now you have wage
Hmm.
and hour issues. Some forms completely exclude it, some
Yeah,
significantly sublimit that. And I've seen agencies just recently I'd say in the past quarter, a huge agency in the Philadelphia area which
hmm,
charged millions of dollars
yes,
on not doing overtime.
yeah.
Uh,
That the misclassification of employees is getting cracked down hard by the Department of Justice and the Department of Labor over the last, well, since the Biden presidency started. I've probably I've probably done about a dozen of these cases where we've had to come in and revamp what their internals look like. There was one agency in Florida that I worked with last year that I was called to come on board to try to help them through the process. They were getting fined $30 million in for misclassification. That's back overtime pay, improperly hiring 1099s, and plus all the penalties and everything that comes along with it. So yeah, that's a big topic.
Yeah, and it's something finds that big, you're not buying insurance for.
No.
Because insurance companies like that is a procedural decision made by management
Yep.
to do something a certain way. A lot of risk management is bringing the right people on the bus. There are
Correct.
things that you're good at, be it visionary as a marketer, or you recognized a target segment which your niche.
Right.
But there are a lot of other things. There should have been an accountant or somebody saying, you know what, you can't do that. Like
Well,
I know a lot
you'll be
over
amazed.
time.
You will be amazed. I've actually I I've been with agencies where, because just like you like to look at what you're walking into when you're advising somebody. I do the same thing. I do a full assessment to see what the business looks like. And I'll see it and I'll tell people, how's your accountant letting you get away with this? Or how's your attorney letting you get away with this? Oh no, I talked to them. Yeah, they told me what I'm supposed to be doing, but this costs less.
Yeah,
So,
and it is, and that's the way
yeah.
I hear it all the time. But I've never had an incident. I've never had a claim. It's like fantastic. You are accident free
Until
completely by
you get that
accident.
first one. Yep.
You've been accident free by
Yep.
accident. And some of the other, so we talked about employment practices liability. So other issues, we'll go back to hired non-auto. I see more claims. The non-auto liability is, I see more claims there than anywhere else, with the exception of maybe workers' compensation. People get injured.
Okay.
In addition to that, let's say you have personally identifiable information on your employees,
Yeah.
certainly on your consumers. You might have personal health information
Yep.
on your clients, and that's highly protected. And if
Yes.
somebody gets access, if somehow those records get breached, you have a duty to notify anyone who might have been
Yes.
part of that breach.
Exactly.
And that notification
Mhm.
process, not to mention the PR nightmare that comes along with that,
Right.
is not cheap.
Well, the issue with that, like I said, I actually just dealt with that very same thing back in July. Um, Employee was upset. The owner, when they terminated the employee, waited 5 days to change the passwords instead of doing it immediately. So they did a data dump, and went by and visited clients that they normally wouldn't have contact with. So that is currently in process. I mean, arrests have been made. There's all sorts of things because it turned out that the information was actually being sold. We're talking about social security numbers, health records, health insurance plans. It's becoming a nightmare that we aren't even sure if there's a salvage point for this agency. Because that's just
I mean, at that point,
it's
HIPAA's
negligent.
involved, and that's federal.
Yeah. Oh no, there's it's just the beginning. You know, the only thing that has kept this agency from being immediately shut down is that thankfully I was working with them on a separate project and I already knew the proper way to notify everybody. So as soon as I was told about what happened, within an hour, every client was notified, hey, there's a potential data breach. This is what happened. So, you know, but they're in a bad way. And you're right. She's being, once this is done, her insurance company pretty much told her they're dropping her,
Of course.
because it's negligent. and it's going to cost a
And then
fortune.
we're on the topic of bad actors. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's people that you don't even know. You don't employ them who can hurt you. And this is I've seen this more recently in the past 2 years than at any point previous. Check washing.
Yep.
Somebody gets a payroll check. Now they have your routing number. They know who the company is,
Yes.
and they have your account number. Then you go into Vistaprint and you order a company check and you
Yep.
write it out for any amount you want to. Eventually, they catch up with it.
Right.
People have been taken by this, and it's
Yeah.
not even hacking a machine.
No.
Uh,
But I mean that in today's world, I'm surprised it's still happening. I have not run into it as of late, but I'm surprised it's still happening because almost everyone I deal with has switched over to direct deposit at this point. But that's crazy. Yeah, I could see that being an
yeah,
issue. I
but
know
it
that
depends
used
what
to be
type of
really big.
it
Hmm.
depends on what your target market are. I mean, there's some
True.
caregivers that don't have banks. They go to a
Right.
check cashing place.
Right. And
And
just a free tip on that, there's companies like Chime and Blue Vine that will allow their virtual banks for anyone watching this, just check them out. Even hell, even Credit Karma will give you a deposit only account, and even Target will. So if your caregivers don't have bank accounts because of credit issues or bad practices, tell them to look into that. You know,
and another thing, like simple risk management. I mean, you could set every bank has check verification now. So
right,
you can sign up for that, and no check gets cashed unless you authorize it. You send
right,
them a roll of the ones you've written, and as they get checked,
yep,
if they're not on the list, they don't. Nothing happens.
exactly.
So that's one thing. The other thing that people I think miss out. So we talked about your information. Competitors.
Right,
Competitors can be a source of claim. With they could say, you know what, you stole my
my
caregivers.
client. Yep,
You stole my clients. You were recruiting and poaching. Bad business practice, unfair trade practices.
yep,
Your general and professional liability is responding to that. Employment practices liability, unless it's wrapped into a bigger management liability policy, it's not catching that.
right,
So be aware. It's
right.
war
So
out.
just to recap, make sure that you have hopefully Peter, but if not, have somebody do a full review of your general liability insurance and your professional liability insurance. Just make sure that those are actually matching the story of what you're doing. Also, don't forget unowned auto, don't forget EPLI, okay, and the data protection
The
policy. Yeah. All
cyber
right.
coverage, and that gets wrapped into the crime issue with checks too. A lot of times those risks can be bundled.
Right. So for those of you watching, once again, don't forget to give us a like and share this video. I mean, we've been here. We've been blessed enough to have Peter come on, and he has really dropped some great information on how you can protect your business with the right policies and understanding what risks need to be managed, especially in the home care space. So leave us a comment below and let us know. Hey, what have you run into in your own business, or what horror stories have you heard? Because I know we can sit here and talk all day about this, between all the things he's seen and things I've seen. In fact, off camera, we've had this conversation, probably spent about an hour and a half on the phone, just back and forth talking about this. So, let us know. Let us know what's going on with you, and and if you have any questions, we'll be sure to get them to Peter. Just leave them down in the comments. So any final words for us? Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, Julio, I just wanted to thank you for having me on today, and just let me know how I can help. I'd
All
love
right.
to have a conversation.
Yeah, and we would love for you all to reach out to Peter and just look, even if you're not signing up with him, just to have that conversation and find out if you have the right policies in place. Okay. All of his contact information will be in the description box below. Don't forget to check him out, give him a call. And you got to understand something that I tell a lot to my one-on-one clients. No one should ever care more about your business's success than you. And if you're not being proactive to protect your business, no one else will. I promise you, those employees that you're trying to look out for, they love you, you love them, but not a single one of them are going to give you the job when you have to close down. All right. Take care of yourself, take care of your business, and take care of each other. We'll see you next time.